This time you are deploying an Azure web app named Demo1 that runs on two instances hosted in a basic app service plan named Demo Plan. The instances are called Instance 1 and Instance 2. And you want to deploy two scripts to run as web jobs in a context of Demo 1 app. And you want to ensure actually that you can support the web jobs running on both instances. And you are required for the following statements, you are required to say either they are true or false. So the first one, you must deploy the scripts as continuous web jobs. 2, you must scale up demo plan to the standard S1 tier. And 3, you must create the web jobs as linked to a web project. Okay, this is an interesting question. Let's see what are the correct answers. So the first one and the third one are correct, and the second one is wrong. The first one is correct because you must deploy the script as continuous web jobs. You can deploy web jobs as continuous or triggered. A continuous web job runs by default on all instances of the linked web app, but can be limited to a single instance. But a triggered web job can run on only one instance. And so we have two instances here. It's pretty clear that we're going to need a continuous web job. For the second question, there is no need to scale up demo plan to standard S1 tier because web jobs are supported on the basic pricing tier. And for the third question, in this case, you must create the web jobs as linked to a web project because this is necessary when you want a web job to run in the context of a web app, which is the case here. You can also create a web job as an independent web job and have the web job run as a web app by itself. And we're going to go in Microsoft documentation to see, actually to get more details on this. So for the first question, we have a table here that does the comparison between continuous web jobs and triggered web jobs. There are different details as well, but what we want to know for this question is that continuous web jobs runs on all instances that the web app runs on. And if you want, optionally, you can restrict the web job to a single instance, while the triggered web jobs runs on a single instance that Azure selects for load balancing. For the third question, we're gonna find the answer in create a new web jobs enabled project. So if you want to use the web jobs new project template for an independent web job, then there is no link to a web project. While if you want to use the web jobs new project template for a web job linked to a web project, so you need to use this option when you want to run your web job in the same web app in which you run the related web application. And so for the second question, I have found the answer under create a scheduled web job. And then you can see that the triggers, so this option is available only in basic, standard and premium pricing tiers, so it's available in basic pricing tier as well. I know this is a bit tricky, the way I found the answer. Maybe you can find it in another place as well. But this is how I could find it myself. For the second question, you create a Linux Azure container group with a single container instance named Instance 1. And so this Instance 1, it's a bit like Inception here. This Instance 1 uses a Docker image that contains an application that uses a local file system to store users' data. And the persistent storage is required to support the application. And you need to configure interactive persistent storage for Instance 1. You have four options for that. So you either choose Azure File Share or Table Storage or Secret Volume or Blob Storage. And the correct answer here is Azure File Share, because Azure File Container instances are stateless by default. If you want to prevent losing data at the end of a container lifetime, you must persist the data to an external store. And this requires you to mount a volume from an external store. In our case, with Linux container instances, you have the option of mounting an Azure File Share for persistent storage with access through the SMB protocol, so a server message block protocol. You shouldn't use an Azure secret volume because you can mount a secret volume, but the secret volume cannot be used for interactive data storage. A secret volume is used to supply sensitive information to the containers in a container group, and a secret volume mounts as read-only. Also, you shouldn't use Azure Blob Storage or Azure Table Storage because the storage options are not supported as external storage options for Azure Container instances. So for storage, you can specify external volumes to mount within a container group, and the supported volumes include Azure File Share, Secret, Empty Directory, Cloned Git repo. We're going to analyze a little bit the first two ones. So firstly, by default, Azure Container instances are stateless. So in the case where the container is restarted or crashes or stops, all of its state is lost. That's why you must mount a volume from an external store. And as shown in this article, Azure Container instances can mount an Azure file share created with Azure Files, because this offers fully managed file shares hosted in Azure storage that are accessible via the industry standard SMB protocol. For why you cannot use a secret volume, because as you can see, this one is read-only, so it will not be interactive with your data. So once deployed with secret in a container group, a secret volume is read-only, because a secret volume stores your secrets in files within the volume, accessible by the containers in the container group. And by storing secrets in a secret volume, you can avoid adding sensitive data like SSH keys or database credential to your application. So of course, this option is very valuable, but it doesn't apply to our scenario.